Okay, friends. So it took me a few months to get this show on the schedule, but it is one with one of my favorite holistic practitioners, Dr. Tyna Moore. I had started following her really hard. I believe it was in 21 or 22, and I was like, this is my girl. Oh my goodness, the way she presents information, the way she takes information and breaks it down into easily understandable terms, and her fearless warrior spirit in standing up with an alternative approach to medicine, which was being censored. I mean, this doctor really risked it all, and she has been through so many trying times because of her willingness to speak out. But I'm going to break this down a little bit. We've all heard about Ozempic, right? We've heard about Wegovy. We've heard about these peptides. And as a nurse in the ER, literally, practically every day I was showing up to work, I was seeing patients come in with these adverse side effects. There was nausea, vomiting, uncontrollably. And I had a conflict at that point because here's this physician that I respected tremendously was speaking out about how beneficial they were. And, just like with the protocols that were happening in the hospital versus the protocols that were happening in the alternative space, what I did was research. And she had this mini workshop set up. And it was you sign up for a link in her bio and you got these videos, 5 days of videos. And as she broke this down on a daily basis, I mean, I was excited. You know how many times you sign up for something and people are trickling the information out to you and you kind of just lose interest. Well, this was the complete opposite. I was more intrigued, and I would look at my email the next day and say, did I get a new video drop? Because what I learned was absolutely mind blowing and eye opening. My 14-year-old calls it Ozempic. Oh, what was it that he said? The Ozempic. Um, oh my goodness, I just lost my train of thought about being jealous, the Ozempic jealousy, right? And he said that there's a lot of that happening. And so I really had to look at it because I knew people personally that were using these peptides and having remarkable life-changing results. But then in my clinical practice, I was seeing people harmed by it. And how Dr. Tyna broke this down was it was just eye-opening and mind-blowing. And so today I want to talk about that, talk about the revelations that I have, because how she says it is that it's a regenerative and longevity healing tool for every person when dosed properly. It has the ability to heal heart tissue, metabolic dysfunction, which is stuff like diabetes, heal the gut, which we've learned that, everything begins in the gut, heal neuroinflammation and slow conditions like Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's, help treat infertility, and so much more. So this is going to be a conversation that is for healing the human race, not just about obesity. So welcome, Dr. Tyna. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be back on, and I always love talking with you, and you're one of my favorite health warriors, so this will be great.
Yes, yes, I agree. That's another thing, guys, is that, there's so many people that I was following that I respected, and we wound up becoming friends. And, in a time where so many of us lost professional relationships, lost family and friendships because of our willingness to speak out, what God did was bring those that were walking in spirit and truth together. And, you know, I don't mourn those relationships anymore that have left my life. I pray for them. If they ever wanted to have a conversation with me, I'm absolutely there. But the friendships that I have created because of speaking out, us coming together is just giving so much education, knowledge, hope, and power to this fight that we're in right now and continuing to be in. So yes, Dr. Tyna, let's talk about that, because you know, one thing that really spoke out to me was the dose is the poison. And that is where my mind shifted, that hey, and we're not going to get into dosing. Don't even send me emails about dosing, because we can't get into that. But what I realized being a nurse doing triage and getting their doing a medical reconciliation and finding out what home meds they were on, what I started to notice was that there was a correlation between dose in people.
Interesting. That's very cool to hear, because that's what got me started. So just to back up, you know, for those who don't know who I am a naturopathic physician and a chiropractor in the state of Oregon and several other states. Naturopathic physicians who are trained in a medical 4-year medical program, not the fake NDs. There's a lot of fake NDs out there. The real ones that went through real medical training have licenses. And in many states, we have licenses to prescribe. So I have a full license to prescribe. I've been prescribing peptides, medications, hormones for decades, and seen lots and lots of patients, helped many patients with weight loss. My practice was predominantly regenerative medicine and bioidentical hormone replacement. So that's what I did. That was my jam. And in that realm is peptides, healing peptides. So there's different peptides out there people might be more familiar with, like BPC 157. There's TB 500. There's different ones. Anyway, I pushed back pretty hard against the COVID narrative, and as did you. And I think in both cases, physically, it started taking its toll on us. You know, the stress that you just cannot have that kind of chronic, unmitigated stress come at you and be pumping that kind of cortisol through your body at all times. You know, your license is at stake. Your reputation is getting tarnished. You're being attacked on all fronts constantly. I was politically targeted. It was just a lot. And it finally took its toll on me. And I have access to some of the most incredible regenerative options in the world, that things that people cannot get their hands on, things that even most doctors don't know about. And I can use them in ways off label on myself that I wouldn't even do for my patients. And nothing was working. I was just getting hammered, and my autoimmune disease was really flaring. I have psoriatic arthritis, and it was really at its height. And I was just getting crushed under the weight of it. And I know that the censorship industrial complex was just trying to wear us down and wear us out. And I was like, I cannot go down. Like, I have work to do on this planet. Like, I am quite literally trying to save humans from going extinct. We are in such a fertility crisis. We are in such a health crisis overall with metabolic dysfunction. And obesity is one piece of it. But overall, we're looking at data that came out in 2018, which I'm sure since is so much worse, showed that roughly 94% of US adults had cardiometabolic dysfunction. So 94% of adults are sitting on some spectrum of prediabetes to diabetes. And then my podcast producer kept saying, you got to do a podcast about Ozempic. And I was like, all right, I got to research this. I'm not going to talk about something I don't know about. And the minute I started looking into it, I was like, oh, hold up. It's a peptide. Wait a minute. If it's a peptide, I know peptides. And I started looking into how it worked in the body. And my first go-to was, how does it impact pain and how does it impact the brain? Because those are my two biggest health concerns. And that's where my whole practice was. So I was interested predominantly in its impacts there. And I found data showing that it was neuroregenerative, neuroprotective at the very least. And something that I want to clarify with folks, because I've had some MDs come in and try to split hairs with me. In the regenerative medicine world, this is what I would tell my patients. In some cases, we're actually going to regenerate tissue. And in other cases, we're simply going to arrest the degenerative process and heal the tissues, which if you think about it, is regenerative.
Right.
So regenerative medicine is somewhere in that spectrum. It's not like, oh, drop the Ozempic on a, cardiomyocyte and it's going to double. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about protecting cells that are being attacked, usually from oxidative stress, usually from hyperglycemia, et cetera. So anyhow, I found some really compelling data around the neurologic tissue, the brain. And so I just started going tip to toe and looking like, GLP-1 agonist and cardiovascular, GLP-1 agonist and pancreas. And I went way down the rabbit hole and I was just completely blown away. So immediately I was like, well, I'm going to try this. And my theory was twofold. One, in bioidentical hormone replacement land, we're not trying to make 65-year-olds have the hormonal milieu of a 25-year-old. We're simply trying to replace physiologic dosage. Their physiologic deficiency. So they might be very low in a hormone, and we just need to get them up to a healthy level. What is that level? It's different for everyone, but it's where symptoms abate. It's where they feel better. We're not trying to get them into I'm not trying to turn a 65-year-old man into Arnold Schwarzenegger in his 20s. I'm just trying to get his testosterone up so he doesn't develop diabetes and heart disease. And that's how we are with women too. And so I started thinking about this and I'm like, well, I wonder if I just replace physiologic deficiency. I wonder if some folks actually have a physiologic deficiency. And there is data to show that folks with obesity, fatty liver, and type 2 diabetes have a GLP-1 deficiency. Is it a frank deficiency, or is it a functional deficiency caused by the process of being in those states, in those pathologic states? I think it is probably more the latter, but I did start to wonder, I wonder if folks are having just kind of a low grade deficiency period. How would that work? Well, the GLP-1 is secreted from the L cells in the gut. If somebody's had long-standing gut inflammation, if they've had inflammatory bowel disease, long-standing IBS, which almost everybody seems to have some level of leaky gut dysfunction, especially under all this chronic stress we've been under the past few years, microbiome disruption, those L cells are going to be petered out. So that would be a functional deficiency, but it might be occurring in folks like myself who I'm lean and fit. I strength train. I do all the things. I'm on the bioidentical hormone replacement. I'm living the, insulin sensitive lifestyle, but I was not feeling okay. And from everything I was reading, I thought, I wonder if I just tried a tiny dose. And so I dubbed this microdosing. It's fractions of the starting dose. That's as much as I'll say. It's fractions of the standard starting dose of these peptides. And these peptides come in pre-filled pens, as you know, and there's no control over the dosage. You get what you get. You're started where you started. They are ramped up quite quickly. And over about 16 weeks, they get brought up sometimes to crazy high doses. Clinically, I would never do that with any other peptide or hormone. Insulin is a peptide. I wouldn't do that with insulin. I wouldn't do that with oxytocin. I wouldn't do that with the sex hormones, the estrogens, the testosterones, et cetera. So why are we doing this with GLP-1s? So I started wondering, I wonder if we just kept it super low, called all my colleagues that I knew might be using it, compounding pharmacists, physicians, you name it, called everybody, was like, hey, are you using this in low doses? Many people were using it in low doses. In fact, a bit lower starting dose than the standard starting dose, because when you get it compounded, you can control the dosage. But nobody was really doing tiny dosages. And so I started playing with that with my patients. I don't have a huge practice anymore. I've stepped away from that, but I still have a, couple dozen patients I see and people I take care of, people I consult with, maybe they're getting prescribed from someone else and they're consulting with me. But we started talking about that. And for various different reasons, everybody started trying it. And maybe it was because they had a history of cardiovascular disease. Maybe it was depression. Maybe it was PCOS. Maybe it was, inflammatory bowel disease. Who knows? The only person I put on it for weight loss was my father. He is a type 2 diabetic. He is morbidly obese. And the guy was not going to make it to next Christmas. And he was getting deep lobar pneumonia every winter. I mean, it was just on. And I'm like the token family doctor because he won't go to the hospital because we're in Oregon and things were a bit dicey here over the past couple of years, if you will. So it's been miraculous. It's just been simply miraculous. So I started talking about this on my platform, and I have a pretty sizable following, and I started getting a lot of feedback from people, hundreds, thousands of people messaging me at this point, because it's been about a year of me talking about it. And it's just remarkable what this peptide is doing for people at standard doses and at these lower doses. And what happened was a lot of people who really were candidates for it, that were scared to go on it because the media has got some smear campaign against it, they decided after watching my educational content, that my 4-part video series that you spoke of, and then also all the podcasts I did on it, they decided to give it a try. And then I hear back from them months later, and they're like, oh my gosh, like, oh my gosh, thank God. I mean, a lot of people basically just saying like, thank God for you. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for pushing back against this, because the entire functional medicine community seemed against it. The entire media seemed against it. Everybody's really sensationalizing these headlines. And when I got into the literature, it just wasn't adding up at all to the clickbait headlines and the propagandized information. And then when you really think about it, and we can talk about this if you want, there's really a lot of industries that have something to lose from people getting healthy, people losing weight. Type 2 diabetes is a very profitable condition for a lot of different industries. And so there's a lot of folks that have something to lose. And I'm wondering if some of the pushback isn't coming from a whole variety of different industries. So anyway,
well,
it's been
that's
a wild
like,
ride.
yeah, I bet. I mean, you know, that's for me, I felt that it was my duty to research what you were saying. You were not letting up on it, and you were taking us along for the ride, if you will, right? When you had information, you were sharing it. And that's another thing, guys. It's really hard to break down complicated information in 90 seconds or less. But that is the, you know, the attention span of someone who is perusing social media has. But then when I was getting these videos dropped to me, you were talking to me, because you had said, I wish that these influencers out here would do some research. And I thought, you're right. Absolutely. I mean, if I did it with ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, you know, and vitamin D, high doses, and C, and those protocols, then why am I not doing this with something that is happening in our country? I mean, not only is our country probably the sickest country in the world with all of these, you know, cardio and metabolic issues, but people are on it. And what's happening is anybody with the ability to prescribe are charging people anywhere between $300 and $700 a month for this peptide. And they are not, you know, changing up the doses. They are not making it patient specific. It's essentially, you know, like cattle coming in, and they're just, here you go, here's your pen, inject it, watch out for constipation, you know, don't overeat because it's slowing the gut down, you know, those types of things. And for me, it was very important to not only heed your research but, you know, I started on it about 6 weeks ago, and I am going to do a series on that. But for the topic for today's show is to break this down for you guys, to know that yes, people are getting better, you know, but what we see in the media headlines, like that Ozempic face, you know, people losing their butt, right? They don't have the fat on them and all this anymore, is I do believe that the dose is the poison. And although we're not going to get into it, this show today is going to be more about, well, let's start. Like, what is semaglutide and Ozempic at its core? Let's start there.
So it's a peptide that our body secretes naturally, so endogenous, from our L cells. The L cells are in our gut. They are from our proximal to our distal small intestine, and they secrete in the presence of glucose, in the presence of a food bolus, so actual mechanical food going through. They secrete GLP-1. It was believed that GLP-1 went up to the brain and had an impact on satiety and appetite, and that it slowed gastric motility. We now know, or I know, because I went way in the rabbit hole, it's also made in the brain. And it's made in the brain, and there's receptors in the different regions of the brain. That really got me interested, because I thought, well, they were saying it just crossed the blood-brain barrier from the gut secretion, but it actually is manufactured and received in the brain, all in the same space. And that made me think it's got to be more important than just satiety. It's not just a satiety hormone. And then I started looking at it in relationship to leptin and ghrelin, which are other appetite hormones, peptides. These are all peptide signaling hormones, if you will. And they all play together like an orchestra, and they don't work if GLP-1 isn't present. That one will drive the other. GLP-1 will need to be there for the receptors to be on the membrane to be utilized of the other. So all of those play together. I was like, well, that's really interesting. So that's in essence what it does. There's also receptors all throughout the body in all of our tissues, and in most organ systems that they've at least studied, and from tip to toe, joints, bones, muscles, brain, cardiac tissue, kidneys, liver, you name it, pancreas. And it's having an impact there independent of weight loss. Independent of its impact on metabolism. And so my definition of regeneration, which is really either healing tissue and or abating pathology, which bringing the tissue back to healed. It's regenerative, it's anti-inflammatory throughout the entire body. It sits on our immune cells, and it is healing.
Yeah.
And so really what really got me was when I started Googling GLP-1 agonists and COVID. Do you want to hear what I found there?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Because there's no test to determine if you're GLP-1 deficient.
No. And again, this is probably more of a functional deficiency. So chicken and egg, it's like, so elevated insulin in the presence of insulin resistance, which so many Americans are sitting in, will indeed drive GLP-1 production down. So that's where this functional deficiency comes in that I speak of. And again, some MDs want to split hairs with me and say there's no such thing as a frank deficiency. And I'm like, yeah, but there is these functional deficiencies. And ideally, when we heal the body and we get the body moving towards better health, those deficiencies won't be so frank. So an example would be like testosterone in the body. There's a lot of men who make plenty of testosterone, but because of their abdominal obesity, because of their blood sugar dysregulation, they're making a ton of a protein called sex-binding hormone globulin, which binds up their free testosterone and makes it unusable to the body. So it's a functional deficiency. Do we deprive them of hormone? No, we give them some testosterone, but we also make sure they're doing all the lifestyle things so that they don't keep having that cycle going. So that's kind of how I'm thinking with this. Anyway, in COVID, really interesting, several studies I found. One that really got me was 2022 Journal of Diabetes. They looked at patients who entered type 2 diabetics who entered hospital with COVID. They were not prior on semaglutide. They were put on semaglutide, which is one of these peptides. There's semaglutide and tirzepatide. Semaglutide is the Ozempic, the Wegovy. Tirzepatide is the Mounjaro.
Okay.
And they were put on semaglutide in the hospital. And what they found was an 80% reduction in ICU admission and death.
Wow.
Yes. So I promptly got my entire family on semaglutide before winter hit this past winter, because I was like, I'm like the family physician. I'm like, I'm not dealing with my aged elderly parents with pneumonia. I'm not doing this again. I don't want to be worried about COVID anymore. So I wanted to see if this would protect them at least from just upper respiratory viruses. We had RSV going around. A lot of people were getting that lingering cough. And I was like, I just want to see if this will protect everyone. Not a single member of my family even got a cold this winter.
Wow.
I'm not exaggerating, not even a sniffle. None of us got sick. Nobody, not even a sniffle. I was like, I checked in recently. I was like, did anyone get a cold this winter? And they were like, nope. Interesting. And then I found another study showing, I think it was an 18% reduction in pneumonia within the presence of an upper respiratory infection when semaglutide was on board. Like I said, it sits on our immune cells. It has a profound anti-inflammatory impact. It's protective to the cardiovascular system, which we know this virus has a huge impact on the cardiovascular. I really think at its core, COVID is a cardiovascular disease process that's what sends everything into a tailspin. So anyway, just really interesting there. And then some recent data came out on cancer. And this, I am shocked, has not been getting any airplay whatsoever. But let me find the statistics so I don't misquote this. Cuts cancer risk by a fifth. 19% less likely to develop 13 obesity-related cancers, including ovarian, liver, colorectal, pancreatic, bowel, and breast cancer. Now, obesity-related, was this because folks lost weight? We don't know, but I actually think that these are working, again, independent of weight loss. So they want to clump these cancers into obesity-related, but these are really common cancers in people who don't struggle with obesity at all. They had 34,000 people led by the Case Western Reserve University in Ohio, also found patients were half as likely to die over 15 years compared with patients not taking the GLP-1 agonist. So
wow. Profound.
Yeah, I wonder why they don't want people on this, you know?
Right.
That's what I was like. And the knee and hip replacement industry is concerned. The fast food companies are concerned. The dialysis clinics that are popping up on every mini mall corner in America are concerned. I mean, this is all just straight out of this is stuff I pulled off of Forbes and off the internet. The CEO of Cheez-Its is very concerned. They're actually making food now. Some of these big food companies are making food to fit into the Ozempic lifestyle. So there's a shift happening. I don't think these peptides are going anywhere soon. We can talk about the big scaries if you want, you know, like the muscle mass loss.
Yes. Yes. We're going to get into
We're going to get there. Okay.
It's very interesting that you bring up that the fast food restaurants are concerned, because I even felt with, you know, also too, because my prescription is at a compound pharmacy, I am paying like 20% of what other people are paying, you know. But here's the thing too, guys, is that when you're on it, you know, when we talk about I say that it lowers the food noise. For me, I'm not thinking when I wake up for breakfast what I'm eating for lunch and what I'm doing here and there. I just don't. It's more about eating to live than living to eat for me, you know. And I going to break. We got to go to break now. But I also am very excited about our new sponsor for Nurses Out Loud, Chemical Free Body, the Green 85. Probiotic enzyme rich juice formula that I have been taking now for several months. I gave it to Malcolm, or I connected Malcolm with Tim James, the owner of Chemical Free Body, and he started getting in on it. And they came up with a bundle, Malcolm's Gut Detox Bundle. But the Green 85 is one of them on there, and it does support weight loss, energy, endurance, immunity, mental clarity, and so much more. So we'll be talking more about that on Nurses Out Loud as the weeks go by. But go check out our family of sponsors at americaoutloud.shop and get exclusive discounts for you, our cherished listeners. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you on the other side of the break. All right, guys, welcome back. An exciting topic and conversation for sure. Like I said, I have been waiting weeks to get this out to you guys. And I want to encourage you all to send us your thoughts and your comments at nurses@americaoutloud.com. That's nurses@americaoutloud.com. And we will have Dr. Tyna come on and answer some of your questions. We're going to answer more of those right now. So keep listening. Make sure you're saving the show. Whatever platform you're listening to us on, if you have the ability to review it and to rate it, we would really appreciate it. We just found out that our shows, we have been out for about a year now, and all of our shows are in the top 1% of podcasts throughout the world. So you guys are making a huge difference. we are here live on air Monday through Friday with a different nurse host speaking at 11 a.m. or 10 a.m. Eastern time, with an encore at 11 p.m. Eastern. And of course, all of our shows go to podcast on all of the podcast platforms that there are. We're on dozens of them. So make sure that we do want to hear from you. So send us an email or comment on whatever social media that you see it on, and we will get back to you. So yes, let's pick it up, Dr. Tyna.
All right. So do you want me to jump into the myths that seem to be making the rounds?
Yes, let's do the myths, and then we're going to break down too the 3 types of patients that it's for, and how it can serve us, and we'll just see how much more time that we have. But yes, let's do the myths.
Okay, so number 1 is it leads people into depression and suicidal ideation. That is being investigated. However, they're pretty much determining that that is incorrect. In fact, it's pretty antidepressant and has a pretty profound impact on people's anxiety levels, and it's very calming. So that's what I'm finding clinically. Again, the dosage, I think, makes a difference. And if people lose weight too quickly, for any reason, they can be more inclined towards depression, because your body fat holds a lot of hormones and it holds a lot of toxins. So that's a longer conversation, but that needs to be put to bed, because they're really not finding a direct causal relationship there at all. In fact, quite the opposite. And there's good studies showing support for low mood. And that's one of the main reasons I'm using it with folks and myself. Number 2 on that note is the muscle loss. Everyone's talking about the muscle loss. First of all, they're looking at lean mass loss. Lean mass is different than it's all the soft tissues in your body, not just your muscle. When we get into a metabolic dysfunction state, metabolically dysfunctional, we end up with fatty liver, fatty pancreas, fat marbling our muscle, very common. And when folks are on these peptides and it's healing their metabolism, it's not just a Band-Aid. Done correctly, it heals the metabolism. It makes them more insulin sensitive. It helps the signaling pathways of insulin and glucagon and sending everything down the right direction. They will lose the fat in those 3 regions pretty quickly. So the marbling that's happening throughout their body will dissipate pretty quickly. So that's going to weigh less, and they're going to have lean mass loss overall. Also, the amount of lean mass loss is right on par with any calorically restricted diet. So anyone who goes into a low calorie state, especially too abruptly, if these folks are dosed up too high, too fast, they get their appetites crushed, they quit eating, they go into a malnourished state. They probably started in a malnourished state. Most folks struggling with obesity are really malnourished and overfed. So they're already walking around in sort of this, they've already got pathological muscle and other tissues. So that's going away very quickly. And
let's touch on that real quick. Because people that are listening to this are probably thinking, how is somebody that has a lot of fat on their body malnourished?
Because most folks in America are eating really nutrient poor food, and they're eating a lot of ultra processed carbohydrates, and they're not getting enough protein. They're not getting enough of the micronutrients and macronutrients and minerals that they need from their food. A lot of the food supply is really deficient in those things. Our soil is depleted, so we're not mineral rich in our produce anymore. So it's a long conversation, but really a lot of folks are just eating what I call the whatever diet. It's the standard American diet. It's the SAD diet. And I know, because I grew up eating it and I was addicted to ultra refined carbohydrates myself. And instead of gaining, I just wasted away. I went the other direction, but it leads to all kinds of pathology. And I mean, if it comes in a package with a bunch of ingredients, it's probably not supposed to go in your mouth.
There you go. Okay. That's it. Thanks for summing that up for people.
Especially if I can't pronounce the ingredients and there's more than 5 of them. I'm like, I'm out. That's not going down the gullet. All right. So yeah, eat food the way God made it, in the forms that God made it. Eat a nutrient-rich diet. Okay. So the muscle loss, calorically restricted diets will do this to anybody. Bariatric surgery amounts to this. Low calorie diets amount to the same percentage loss across the board as these GLP-1s. The other thing is that folks are probably not protecting their muscle when they're on them. So they're probably not strength training. They're probably not focusing on hitting their macros. I don't know if their doctors are not encouraging them to. Most doctors I have found, even in the functional medicine community, don't have a clue how to deal with metabolic health. So they themselves aren't often in very good health themselves. I mean, they're doing a holistic type of medicine, but they're not actually, walking the talk. And what we need is more doctors that are metabolic health educated, helping guide these people that are on the GLP-1s. We need more strength and conditioning coaches. We need more nutritional therapists and health coaches understanding how these work appropriately. That's why I made a whole course about it, because I want to make sure that they are leading folks down the right direction and supporting them instead of vilifying them and shunning them like we seem to be doing. If you're a health professional, get on board with this, because these aren't going anywhere. They're actually coming out with a whole slew of pill form, more injectables. Different pharmaceutical companies are coming out with new versions here soon. It's a very exciting time. Some would say, oh my goodness, big pharma, we hate them. But honestly, I don't know. I really walk between two worlds. I am very grateful for pharmaceuticals when needed. And these are peptides. They've just been appropriated by the pharmaceutical industry. There are other peptides available by nutraceutical companies in supplement form. So it's just a matter of like who got their claws into them, Right. And let's see, the thyroid cancer study just came out looking at all the data. Some of these headlines on some of these studies from the past few years have been misleading because they were correlative and not causative by any means. Folks who struggle with obesity are twice as likely to get thyroid cancer, and those with type 2 diabetes are 1.5 times more likely. So couple that, because most folks with type 2 do have some obesity involved. This is a group already looking at thyroid cancer being higher. Right. And then we're correlating through looking at patient records over time saying, oh, well, this group had more. Data just came out recently saying, no, we have absolutely there's no causative impact of these GLP-1s. In fact, they might be protective to the thyroid. So I'm putting that one to bed. But of course, there's a black box warning. That black box was based on studies done in rats. These rats already have a higher propensity for this very rare medullary thyroid cancer. It's very rare in humans. We have a different set of receptors on our thyroid than rats do. And what they didn't tell you is that in the control group, those rats also got medullary thyroid cancer at an increased risk. So risk tolerance, talk to your physician. Any family history or personal history of thyroid cancer, obviously talk to your doctor. The one real risk that I think is totally legit is gallstones. And what happens there is that the person who's looking at a higher propensity of gallstones is already that woman who's probably going to seek out GLP-1s. These women are usually, have you heard the 4Fs? These women are fertile.
Oh yes. When you talked about this in the videos, I was like, oh, fat, 40,
fertile. So high estrogen. Yeah, it's kind of that, it's just really that curvy middle-aged woman, right? Like that woman who's got the estrogen is at an all-time high. This is right before menopause, right? Or maybe they're in estrogen dominance and they've got some weight to lose and they're in their 40s. It's just that classic scenario. So anyway, these ladies are already looking at gallstones. And then if you put them on a GLP-1 at a high dose, which I don't recommend, then they end up crushing their appetite. They stop eating. Maybe they're just eating less of the already garbage food they were eating. So maybe folks are, like we talked about, they're eating the SAD diet. And so they just eat less volume of it. So they're still crushing the Chick-fil-A's, but maybe just less of them. That's not great on the gallbladder. And their gallbladder was already sluggish and challenged. And now we've slowed down food going and motility, right? Peristalsis doesn't go if you don't have something going through you. And now their gallbladder gets all sludgy and it throws a stone, and that stone will lodge into the pancreas. So the number one cause of pancreatitis is fatty pancreas, which these folks already have. And the number two cause is lodging a stone in there. Yeah. Another risk for pancreatitis is rapid weight loss. So these are concerns that are real, but this is a management issue, in my opinion. So these folks need to be managed very carefully. I get this question a lot from my followers. I have had a history of gallstones. Can I take GLP-1s? I'm like, fuck if I know, ask your doctor. Right. Disrespect, but talk to your doctor who's going to manage you. I don't know what your labs look like. I don't know what your, phenotype is like. I can't put my hands on you to palpate anything. So yes, please check with your physician and work with them closely, because I think this can be done safely in that group as well. But there is a risk there, and I think that's real. The gastroparesis thing, type 2 diabetics having gone on for a long time, will have that hyperglycemia slowly erode their vagus nerve. So they're already prone to gastroparesis. They're already probably looking at gastroparesis. They just don't know it yet. It's being diagnosed as GERD and they're being put on Pepcid. You know, they're like that group, doctors aren't really putting two and two together. So crank that person up on a dose of GLP-1 and send them over the edge. And yeah, their stomach motility is going to come to a screeching halt. Is it permanent? I don't think so. In fact, in every piece of data I've looked at, no, these peptides take a few weeks to get out of your system. Gastric motility returns to normal. If someone's already at high risk for gastroparesis, though, because they're sitting in that type 2 diabetic group, especially prolonged type 2 diabetes, then yeah, this is a concern. And so we need to, again, check dosage and be careful with management. What are some of the other ones that are the big scaries?
Well, the Ozempic face.
Oh, okay. So that's just rapid weight loss as well.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you've been carrying a lot of weight around for a long time. And when we see this all the time on Instagram with people who've gotten into strength training and good nutrition and they've lost a lot of weight, they generally have to go get a skin surgery to remove excess skin. So if we become gaunt too quickly, we don't want to have rapid weight loss ever. I don't care if you're trying to do this with or without Ozempic. We want 1 pound a week max of weight loss. That's really ideal. And so now, initially, we might have a bit of a drop off because there's some bloat coming off people because of I believe, the immunologic impact of these peptides. But beyond that, we want a slow pace. And that allows time for the body to compensate. So yeah, you will lose muscle tissue. You will lose fat pads. You will lose fat too rapidly if you become malnourished. It's malnourishment, basically. So you're not feeding the muscle and you're not giving your body what it needs, and everything's gonna start to sag. So yeah, I think those are the big ones. I can't think of anything else offhand right now. I do know that something that no one's talking about is that these peptides work on the HPA axis and on the dopaminergic reward system. And what that means is it's showing, one of the pleasant side effects I was not expecting was that my husband has no desire to drink when he's on these. And my husband is an alcoholic and no desire to drink. So I was like, well, that's interesting. Of course, I start getting messages from followers and they're like, yeah, I'm taking it so that I could stay off cigarettes and stay off alcohol. I got messages from other followers. I am off of hard drugs because of it. And so there's something happening there, and it is being studied for alcohol abuse syndrome. And it's pretty cool because there's something happening where people just do not have, it's not just food noise that you were describing. It's just dopamine hit drive noise.
Right.
And a lot of people's, go ahead.
No, sorry about that. But you talked about your mom using it for pain.
Yeah. So my mom has Crohn's and we did not diagnose her with that until 2019. I don't know. My grandma died of Crohn's, literally died on the toilet of Crohn's. They found her on the toilet. Many people on my mom's side have died of it or had chunks of bowel removed or chunks of liver removed. Like, it's a thing on that side of the family. And she came down hard with it in 2019, got very, very ill. She is on a very expensive medication from Canada. And because it's too expensive in the United States, so she ships it in from Canada. And she was pretty steady, but not quite. Still couldn't eat a lot. And I put her on the tiniest dose, and not only did her gut normalize and her medication dose is down and her ability to eat different foods is increasing and improving, which is really helpful because then we can get more nutrition in our bodies, right? If foods aren't, every little thing isn't setting off our gut, but all of her joint pain went away. And she's had this joint pain my whole life. We just never put 2 and 2 together and correlated it to inflammatory bowel disease, which I can't, it's like they say, don't treat your family because you miss things, but she never complained. So I didn't realize her gut was that compromised all these years. So anyway, she's completely out of pain. And that is miraculous to me. Totally turned around my daughter's, a whole slew of things. PCOS, PTSD. My daughter's a bit neurodivergent. She's somewhat vaccine injured. So she has a really hard time, ADHD, like really hard time keeping her ducks in a line and doing her work and just being in the world. Really socially reclusive. Put her on a tiny dose of semaglutide. She's out in the world. She's making friends. She has a boyfriend. She's holding down a job. She's able to get through her workday and keep herself organized. It's like night and day. It's so obvious that when she doesn't take it, I notice. And I'm like, did you take your shot this week? Because you're, or her mood will dump and she will turn into a hermit again. So these are just some, I just have permission to speak about them.
Yes.
is why I'm sharing this in such detail, but it's just really been profound what I've seen the differences for myself. Cognition improvements, which was what I was looking for. I was in that perimenopause, post-COVID, high stress brain, just my brain was just going down. And if you're not a high functioning, boss babe, you don't really notice it. But I have so many businesses and so many plates in the air. And I was like, I can't keep up. This really creates a calm focus for me, very calming to the mind. My mom also reported that. She said, my anxiety was so high because of your dad's health over the past few years that I really thought it was going to take me out. And the minute you gave me that semaglutide, it all just calmed down.
Yeah.
So versus all of the pharmaceuticals that I've tried all of them on, and the mountains of supplements. I mean, this is not, I don't go for drugs first. I'm a naturopathic physician. I improve people's health while simultaneously trying to reduce the drug burden that they're on. But sometimes we still need the drugs, and I will pull them out when I need to because I can prescribe them. But, piles of supplements that people don't want to take, which also get costly.
Yeah.
So it's a
And
balance.
we can't really trust so many of these supplement companies, because they're bought by larger pharmaceutical companies, and they're changing it. I think Burt's Bees is one of them that people were talking about that, they don't own that anymore.
Yeah, it just gets dicey. And so my goal really is to have the patient utilize the minimal amount of things necessary. So if we can do a couple peptides and a couple supplements and some bioidentical hormone replacement, and I'm able to pull in an additional tool like GLP-1s to potentially lower the dosages on all of those, then I'm all for it. But that's how I practice. That's the program that I have, is I teach people, general public and health professionals, this is how you do a comprehensive treatment protocol, because this is the same protocol I've been doing for decades. I'm just using GLP-1s now as an additional tool in the tool belt. And it's just life-changing for people. And some people know all this stuff, and that's cool. But for a lot of people, they don't, or a lot of people are wanting to seek out this kind of care, and the doctors don't all know it. And so being informed and being educated, that's really my goal. I just really want people informed and educated. And then the last thing is this Ozempic babies phenomenon I want to touch on, because we're in a massive fertility crisis, like massive. My friend just told me yesterday that in Japan, men are paying out of country men up to $75,000 to impregnate their wives because their sperm counts are so low. And then in the same day, I saw a video showing how many houses were coming available for purchase that were just abandoned because they have a whole generation of people just dying out. And so there's empty houses all over Japan at rock bottom prices. South Korea is literally out of time. Like, they are not going to reproduce enough to replace themselves here very shortly. By 2040, 2050, by 2050, I read a stat, 97% of countries will not be reproducing enough to repopulate themselves.
Wow. What do we think that's from, especially in Japan?
Sperm counts are abysmal. They say by 2040, sperm counts will be essentially zero. This is not stuff I made up. Like, this is easily Googleable. Is that a word?
Well, yeah. Or I actually had a conversation on a Q&A about the use of AI in Googling it. But anyway, well, that's interesting.
It's a lot of things, but I think a lot of it is metabolic dysfunction. I think at the core of so much of this, I firmly believe that COVID would not have decimated certain countries as bad if they had been metabolically sound. What countries got hit the hardest? The countries that had poor metabolic health overall. So flat out, like, this isn't a judgment. This is something I knew going in. This is something I've been pounding the drum on for over a decade online. Like, we've got to get our metabolic health in order, and people just don't want to hear it. And even the real risk of death was not enough to get people to take action and get their health in order. They just wanted to fight with me online. They wanted to censor me. They wanted to report me because I was telling them to eat meat and go lift weights and go out in the sun. Like, they just wanted to argue it. And it's like, yo, no one gets out of this.
Yeah.
Like, the only way out is through. Your health is your responsibility. I'm not saying there's a magic peptide that's the cure all. You have to do all the work in addition to using the peptide. It's not.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. All the work. We have a couple of minutes left here. And you tell me what, if you feel different about it. but essentially trying to aim for at least 30 grams of protein in your meal. That should be the first thing that you eat, because you're filled up on that, not, not carbs. Not
Yes.
saying that you can't have the carbs. You can have a balanced plate of food, but protein should be up at the top. And do you suggest that if, say, your weight loss target goal is, say, 150 pounds, that you should aim for 150 pounds of protein a day?
I would say in an ideal world, if somebody has an easier time getting protein down, then yeah, shoot for that. Shoot for grams per pound of body weight of your ideal weight. But that's really hard for a
It
lot of
is.
people. And I feel like it's overwhelming. And when we get overwhelmed and it's daunting, we just do nothing.
Right.
Right. And I don't want people to shut down. I think 30 grams is really reasonable. It's doable. It's about the size of a medium chicken breast. It's about the size of the palm of your hand.
Mhm.
I think that's something people can do. And
Yes.
so really encouraging folks, especially petite women. I'm an undereater. I don't love eating anything, actually. I'm not a big eater. So whatever you can hit, but yes, protein forward, protein first, right? And if anybody's interested in learning more, go read Dr. Gabrielle Lyon's book, Forever Strong. It's a really great breakdown, but just protein first is ideal. And then bring in the carbs, nutrient dense, right? We want a plethora of colors on our plate,
Yeah.
whatever else you like, but fill up first on the good nutrient dense food. And then if you want to have a little ice cream or a little something, you're just not going to have room for it when you're on GLP-1s. There's only so much room in that sack
Yeah.
that is your stomach. And so fill it first with protein, especially if you're on these, because you will run out of room and then you will become malnourished and protein malnourished if you don't.
And then we need to keep up our water, because as Dr. Tina said, that it does, slow down the motility and peristalsis in our gut. And all peristalsis is doing is removing water, right, as it's moving through the GI tract. So that's why constipation is a concern. So make sure you're drinking half of your body weight in ounces of water a day. Would you agree?
Yes, and there's also signals coming from the brain that are somewhat blunted when you're on these peptides. Hydration, thirst
Yep.
signals from the
Okay.
brain.
Right. And
Yeah.
then weight training.
Yeah.
And you can even start out, guys, with just your own body weight, right?
Yep.
It's not saying that you have to have weights in your hand, because your body weight doing squats, doing push-ups.
Yes.
Go
I love weights. I mean, that's the thing. It's interesting. It's hard for some people to move their body weight. They don't have a lot of control or the weight's too much. And so sometimes actually weights can be helpful as counterbalances. People
Mhm.
don't realize that. Like I actually can do some pretty challenging moves. And if I have no weight in my hand, it's harder than if I have, 40 pounds in my hand. So find someone that can help you or find a program that resonates with you. But we have to prioritize muscle. Whether we're on GLP-1s or not, you guys, this is non-negotiable, especially if you're a female. If you want to ensure good metabolic health, you have to have muscle on your body. That's it. Like there's no getting around that. There's no, well, what if I don't like lifting weights, Dr. Tina? What can I do? There is nothing else you can do. You have to prioritize strength training. You have to find a way to enjoy it, or at least get it done. If you, man or woman, if you want to age well, not break a hip and not end up with diabetes as you age, period.
Yes. And ultimately, guys, it is about being able to move your body in this world. Being functioning. Are you able to get the groceries, or are you having to call your kids in?
Yeah.
I'm going out and getting, 5-gallon, 25-gallon water jugs, 100 of them. And I don't need to have my 14-year-old son come out to the car to get it. I can bring it in.
Amen.
Yes. I mean, I hope that this show, because I knew there's so much information here, and I want you to take it in, listen to it again. Go to Dr. Tina, DRTYNA. You can find her on all the social media platforms under Dr. Tina. She also has the Dr. Tina show on podcast. Put that on and follow the show. So when she drops a new show, you see it. And I'm telling you, I mean, this conversation with her, I knew that it was going to be amazing. But I hope that we give you some information on the myths and talk to you about the regenerative properties that is bioavailable practically in every organ system that we talked about, you know, that you can help heal from. And then also some things that you can do just naturally, you know, the getting the protein in, the water, the strength training, because I think anybody that says that they haven't or that they don't like lifting weights are people that never lifted weights before. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw that one out there, because you can't tell me that if you can pick up a weight and, you know, and you're strong and it changes the appearance of your body, there's nothing not to like about it. You know,
Oh, yeah, it's a superpower.
it,
It's a superpower that people who don't have strength don't know, and it's phenomenal.
it absolutely is. So
Yeah.
thank you for joining us today, guys. This is the end of the show. I thank you for joining us all the time, and all the nurses. And also too, America Out Loud.news platform. We have amazing hosts in such a different variety of topics and genres, that there is certainly something for you at any hour of the day. If you downloaded the America Out Loud Talk Radio app, you have the app on your phone and you can listen to any show that is on there playing at that time. It's 24-hour uncensored news and broadcasting. So until next time, friends, be safe, be well, and God bless.